The crowd went silent the moment she lifted her chin. That was the first thing Samuel Hayes noticed as he stood at the edge of Willow Creek's dusty main street. The Arizona sun burned hot enough to turn the whole world gold, but nothing shone brighter than the defiance in the young woman's amber eyes as she stood chained on the auction platform. People whispered, stared, pointed. Some laughed. Others looked afraid. But she stood tall, and Samuel could not look away. The year was 1882, and Willow Creek was the kind of town that chewed people up and spat them out. Dust devils swirled between the weather-beaten buildings as curious men pushed forward, boots grinding into the dirt. Women clutched their shawls tighter, whispering behind gloved hands. At the center of it all stood Elena. 23 years old, bare feet cut by the rocky earth, auburn hair tangled by the wind, dress torn at the seams, and she looked like she had been carved straight out of the wilderness she came from. Chains bound her wrists, but she held herself like no iron could tame her wild spirit. The auctioneer, Josiah Pritchard, waved his gavel with a greasy smile. "Gentlemen," he announced proudly, "what we have here is a genuine wild creature, found living like an animal in the canyons, fights like a demon, talks only when she pleases." A few men whistled. Someone yelled, "What's her name?" "Elena," Pritchard replied. "Least that's what she goes by. The county's done with her. Whoever buys her, buys trouble." Laughter rolled through the crowd, but Elena didn't flinch. Her amber gaze swept over the faces staring at her like she was a prize horse, and then her eyes met Samuel's. He felt it like a spark, a jolt, something unspoken passing between them. Recognition, somehow. A shared understanding of pain, perhaps. Samuel shifted his weight, a steel gray eyes narrowing beneath the brim of his hat. He hadn't come to town for this. He needed supplies, flour, salt, coffee for the long winter ahead. But something about the girl held him rooted in place. She looked like a cornered wolf, and Samuel knew that feeling too well. "Let the bidding begin," Pritchard shouted. "Starting at $20. Voices rose. 20, 30, 35. Bull Morrison shoved forward, grinning like a man already counting his winnings. $40. She'll be fun to break." Before anyone could react, Elena spat at him. Morrison's face darkened, and one of the deputies struck her across the mouth. Blood trickled down her chin, but she didn't fall. "She ain't no horse," Elena growled, "and I'll kill any man who tries to break me." The crowd hissed. Some laughed, others muttered prayers. But Samuel felt something tighten inside his chest. Anger, maybe, or something deeper. Pritchard looked shaken, but pleased by the drama. Do I hear 45? He called. Bull Morrison puffed up. 50. Samuel stepped forward. A hush fell over the street. His boots hit the wooden platform with a low thud. He stood tall, broad shoulders, sun-browned skin, a man carved by work and grief. His presence alone was enough to make Morrison stiffen. "Samuel Hayes," someone whispered. "The rancher from Triple Creek." 80, Samuel said quietly. People gasped. Morrison snarled. "You trying to steal her from me?" Hayes?" Samuel didn't look at him. He looked only at Elena. 100. Pritchard nearly swallowed his own tongue. 100? Samuel pulled a leather pouch from his coat. "Cash. End it." Morrison's hand twitched toward his gun. The crowd tensed. But Samuel didn't move. He didn't have to. Everyone in Willow Creek knew he was one of the fastest shots in the territory. After a long moment, Morrison spat into the dust. "She's all yours, Hayes. No man can tame her anyway." Samuel ignored him. He waited as the deputy unlocked Elena's chains. They fell to the platform with a sharp clang. Elena rubbed her raw wrists, eyes fixed on Samuel. "You bought nothing," she said. "I am no man's property." "I never said you were," Samuel replied. "But staying here means staying with them." He tipped his head toward the crowd. "And they want blood." Elena looked at the faces watching her hungrily. She wasn't afraid, but she understood danger when she saw it. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Nothing," Samuel said, "except that you come with me, for now." A long pause. Then she nodded once. "I won't kneel," she warned. "Never asked you to." Samuel stepped aside. "My wagon's this way." They walked through the silent crowd together, side by side. Elena didn't trail behind him. She kept pace beside him, a head high despite her injuries. Someone whispered, "He'll regret this." Another murmured, "Only a fool buys trouble." But Samuel didn't care. He only cared about getting her out alive. At the wagon, Samuel asked, "Can you ride?" Elena straightened, fire sparking in her eyes. "Better than any man here." He pointed to the mare tied behind the wagon. "She's yours." Surprise flickered across Elena's bruised face, but she swung into the saddle with the grace of someone born in the wild. As Samuel mounted his own horse, an old woman called from the crowd, "You can't love the wildness out of a thing, Samuel Hayes." Samuel looked back once. "I'm not trying to," he said. "Maybe it doesn't need to come out at all." And with that, man and wild girl rode out of Willow Creek, their shadows stretching long behind them as the sun dipped low. Two strangers bound by circumstance, two souls who had survived too much, two hearts heading toward something neither could see yet, but both could feel. The desert night wrapped around them like a cold blanket as Samuel and Elena rode away from Willow Creek. The moon hung full and bright, turning the canyon walls silver. Coyotes cried in the distance. The only steady sound came from the horses' hooves striking the hard-packed earth. Elena didn't speak. She rode with her back straight, eyes constantly scanning the horizon, as though danger hid in every shadow. Samuel rode beside her, giving her space. He knew better than to press someone who had lived too long alone. After 3 silent hours, they reached a small grove of cottonwoods surrounding a spring, the only safe camp for miles. "We'll rest here," Samuel said. Elena didn't move. She watched him with guarded suspicion, her body coiled tight like a bowstring. Samuel didn't push her. He took care of his horse first, letting her see his back, letting her understand he wasn't a threat. Only then did she dismount. Samuel gathered dry wood and built a fire. Its warm glow pushed back the night as flames flickered over the cottonwood trunks. He set 2 bedrolls on opposite sides of the fire, then pulled hardtack and jerky from his saddlebag. He held some out to her, without looking directly at her. "Hungry?" Elena snatched the food quickly, the reflex of someone who'd known hunger too often. She ate with quiet intensity, as though every bite mattered. Samuel didn't comment, but he remembered too well what it felt like to go without. For a long moment, only the fire crackled. Then her voice broke the quiet. "Why did you buy me?" Samuel kept his gaze on the flames. Couldn't stand to watch what they were doing, or what they would have done if Morrison got you. "That's not an answer," she said, eyes sharp and searching. "Everyone wants something." "Maybe," Samuel admitted, "but not from you, not like that." Elena studied him like she was trying to find the lie. "Most men would have let the town deal with me," she said. "They called me wild, dangerous." Samuel poked the fire with a stick. "Survival isn't dangerous. People who misunderstand it are." She sat back, her expression unreadable in the firelight. "If I run tonight," she said slowly, "will you hunt me down?" "No." Her brows lifted. "Ah, but I'd ask you to think about the land out there," he added. "That desert doesn't care about freedom. It kills quicker than any man." For the first time, something flickered across Elena's face. An understanding, maybe even respect. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself and looked into the flames. "You speak like someone who's lost things," she murmured. Samuel said nothing. The fire crackled. Coyotes howled again. Eventually, Elena curled up on her bedroll, still facing him, still watchful. Samuel leaned against a cottonwood, his rifle across his knees, taking first watch like he always did. Hours passed. Near dawn, Elena woke with a start, breath shaking. Samuel turned his head. "Bad dreams?" She nodded, but said nothing. The eastern sky began to glow with soft pink light. "We'll ride with the morning cool," Samuel said gently. By sunrise, they were already on the trail, moving through a pale desert, washed clean by the new day. Elena rode with a strange mix of pride and exhaustion, her silhouette sharp against the golden sky. She broke the silence first. "That thing you said in town, about me riding into your heart." Her voice was calm, but he heard the question behind it. "Did you mean it?" "Meant it as mockery of the fools yelling at us," Samuel admitted. Then softer, "But there might have been truth in it too." Elena didn't look at him, but he saw her jaw tighten, saw something shift in her eyes. I still might run," she said. "I know, and you're here anyway." They rode the rest of the morning in silence, but the air between them felt different, less hostile, more curious. A fragile truce forming between two people who didn't trust easily. By afternoon, the Triple Creek Ranch spread before them like a rough jewel carved from the land, hard, weathered, stubborn, and alive. Elena stared at it with something between fear and hope. Samuel dismounted. "It's not paradise," he warned. "I'm just land. We work hard and try to keep alive." Elena's voice was low. "I've never had a real home." Samuel paused. "Maybe this one can be yours," he said gently. "If you want it." The words hung between them, powerful and frightening. Elena said nothing, but when she followed him toward the house, Samuel knew something inside her had shifted. For the first time, she walked beside someone without expecting to be caged. For the first time, and she let herself wonder what it might feel like to belong. Danger came before sunrise, not from the land, not from the sky, but from the men who had watched Samuel ride out of Willow Creek with the one woman they believed belonged to them. The thunder of approaching horses shook the cold morning air. Samuel grabbed his rifle as he stepped onto the porch. Elena appeared beside him at the same moment, knife already in hand, her eyes sharp with instinct. "Get inside," Samuel ordered. No." She stayed where she was, shoulders squared. "I won't hide from them." 15 riders stormed into the yard, torches blazing. At their front sat Jake Morrison, Bull Morrison's meaner, crueler brother. "Well now," Jake drawled as he dismounted. "Look what the desert dragged home. The wild girl and the fool rancher who thinks he can keep her. Tudumpi." Miguel and young Billy positioned themselves around the yard, rifles in hand. The air cracked with tension. "You're trespassing," Samuel said calmly. "State your business." Jake smiled the way snakes do before they strike. "We're here for what's ours. That girl embarrassed my brother. She's a thief, a danger, and she belongs in chains." Elena stepped forward before Samuel could stop her. "I belong to no one," she said clearly. "Not now. Not ever." Jake's grin widened. I like fiery ones. They break harder. One of his men laughed. Think she'll scream? The knife in Elena's hand flew. It embedded in a post inches from the man's head, quivering. The laughter died. The next one, she said coldly. Won't miss. Samuel stepped forward then, voice deep and steady. You're not taking her. Jake's eyes flicked over the ranch hands, the rifles, Elena's stance. But he still tried to play the man unafraid. Funny thing about the law, Jake sneered. It tends to side with decent folk, not wild animals. Funny thing about decent folk, Samuel replied, is they don't ride 15 deep to steal a woman in the dark. Tom raised his rifle. Miguel did the same. Even Billy's hand stopped shaking long enough to aim true. 5 guns against 15? Jake mocked. 6, Elena corrected, pulling another knife from her boot. Jake hesitated, and that hesitation saved lives. His men shifted uneasily. Several reached for reins instead of guns. This ain't over, Hayes, Jake finally spat. The town won't stand for a wild thing running loose, and it won't stand for the fool protecting her. Samuel stepped closer, his voice low. Get off my land before I put you in the ground. Jake glared at Elena, at Samuel, at the united wall of defiance. Then he retreated. The riders galloped away in a cloud of dust. Elena's hands began to shake from the flood of adrenaline, but she forced herself steady. Samuel didn't touch her, didn't push her, but sat beside her on the porch step. You all right? He asked softly. You could have died, she whispered. So could you. Maybe that doesn't matter to you, Elena muttered, but it matters to me. Samuel looked at her then, really looked, and she felt that look like something warm in her chest. 3 days later, Willow Creek gathered for a town hearing. The largest barn in town overflowed with ranchers, merchants, and curious onlookers, all of them ready to decide Elena's fate. Elena walked in with her chin high, Samuel at her side. The whispers hit them like dust storms. That's her, the wild girl. She stole from half the county. She belongs locked up. Judge Cornelius Blackwood hammered his gavel. Order! Jake Morrison rose first. Your Honor, she's a thief, a danger. She assaulted my men. I defended myself, Elena cut in. Well, when they tried to drag me from the canyons like an animal. You lived like one, Jake snapped. Better that, Elena said, than live like the men who hunted me. A murmur rippled through the room. Samuel stepped forward. She's a free woman working on my ranch. She harms no one. She stole! A merchant shouted. Elena nodded. Food, blankets, when I was starving and freezing. I'll repay every cent. The merchant froze, shocked. No wild girl had ever spoken so plainly, and the judge leaned forward. Is theft the only charge? Jake puffed up. She's dangerous. Look at her. The judge stared at Elena. The bruises had faded, but the wildness in her eyes had not. She is dangerous, the judge agreed. Jake grinned. The judge continued. To anyone who tries to harm her, that is not a crime. Jake's face fell. The judge raised his voice. This young woman endured unimaginable trauma, survived alone, committed minor thefts to stay alive. Those are acts of necessity, not malice. He struck his gavel. Elena Marchetti is free. Gasps filled the barn. Jake sputtered. This is a mistake. One more word, Judge Blackwood warned, and I'll hold you in contempt. When the crowd spilled outside, Samuel turned to Elena. You're free. Elena looked down at her hands, hands once chained in front of a jeering town. No, she said quietly. I'm finally seen. The journey back to the ranch was different. Elena didn't ride behind Samuel. She rode beside him. closer than before. When they reached the porch, Elena stopped him with a hand over his heart. "You stood for me," she said softly. "No one ever has." "You deserve someone who will," Samuel replied. "Every day." Elena swallowed hard. "Samuel, I think I've been riding towards something without knowing it." "And what's that?" he asked. She placed her palm against his chest, right where his heartbeat lived. "You." Samuel covered her hand with his own. "No man could tame you," he said gently. "But you walked into my life like you belonged here." Then Elena whispered the words she once swore she'd never say. "I'm not running anymore." When Samuel kissed her, it wasn't the kiss of a man who claimed something. It was the kiss of a man who finally found home. And Elena, the wild girl no one could break, it kissed him back with a quiet certainty. Because she had found her home too.